Hello, I'm Luke, and welcome to another episode of the Vision to Victory podcast, where we discuss practical ways to turn your dreams into reality. We spent the last several weeks talking about finding freedom in our lives. We've talked about the freedom to hope, the freedom to pursue, the freedom to heal. And today I want to discuss the freedom to let go. Now, letting go is a common theme on this podcast. I talk about it often in relation to different topics, and it's because it is relevant to nearly every area of life. We've talked about the need to let go of a past season of life when we're transitioning to a new one. We've talked about letting go of habits or ways of thinking in favor of new growth and development. And again, today we're going to talk about the freedom to let go. And normally I'd start with the why, right? The why is it important to find the freedom to let go? I want to do it a little different today. I want to unpack it first and then talk about the why. And on the surface, it might seem that letting go is simply a choice. And while there is some truth to it being a choice, it's rarely simple and it's rarely easy, especially if we're talking about, weighty things in life. Let's give a couple examples. Think about cleaning out the clothes in your closet. Now, obviously, this is not one of those weighty things. But if you're like me, you probably have a bunch of stuff that you never wear. But for some reason, we don't want to get rid of it. Why? Or maybe a more difficult one, maybe you have a friend or a friend group that doesn't share your current values, but you still spend time together and you feel worse about yourself every time you do. But you keep expending the energy on the friendship. Why? You know that energy could be better spent on people and things that are life-giving, but you don't. Or maybe it's a job is unfulfilling and going nowhere. Maybe it's a bad habit. Maybe it's social media or a substance. Whatever it is, the question is, why do we hold on? So let's unpack that a little bit. I believe there's a few primary reasons that we hold on to things when perhaps we should not. The first I would say is comfort. We default as people to what is familiar. A recent Harvard research suggests that between 90 and 95% of our decisions made each day are subconscious. Think about that. There are things that we do without intention. We're not thinking, I'm going to do this because. There are obviously those conscious decisions that we make, and there's certainly value to the fact that our brains are, amazing things and can make subconscious decisions. There's a whole nother bit there that maybe we talk about in another episode of how do we inform our subconscious, which we absolutely can't do. But for the purpose of this episode, we're talking about holding on to things. And one of the primary reasons is comfort and what's familiar. And there's lots of challenges that come with that because what is familiar is not always what's good, helpful, or productive or relevant to our lives today. The second reason that we hold on to things is fear. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. There's a lot there, but I think we all have experienced this on some level of, going back to the surface level example of the closet and the clothes, right? Well, I might need this sometime. Or maybe there's some nostalgic value in your mind. Whatever it is, there's a fear there that's causing you to hang on to something. The third reason that we hold on to things is indecision, which often comes from fear of making the wrong decision, or maybe you don't trust yourself. And there's some underlying beliefs there, but whatever the case, it keeps us holding on to things because, we can't decide what to do. The fourth reason is guilt or shame. this is a weighty one, and we're not going to unpack this in its entirety today, but I would say this, we can have guilt or shame either for letting go or maybe wanting to let go of something, or we can have guilt or shame for something we did. And in order to let go, we would have to fully acknowledge the weight of what happened. And I'm talking about acknowledging it to ourselves of like, this is what happened. And there's a facing of events there that has to happen in order to let go. And it's easier to keep it, in the back of our mind or whatever that is. But the problem is that the guilt and the shame still inform us and keep us weighed down. The fifth reason is that we inaccurately or unproductively ascribe meaning to things. I'm going to unpack this a little more in the next bit about what's required to let go. But this happens so often where we ascribe meaning to something that isn't really based on anything except maybe our feelings at the time and some predispositions of how we think about things. It's not necessarily an accurate view or portrayal of an event or thing or whatever it is. Again, we'll talk about that a little more. So again, the reasons we hold on to things are comfort, fear, indecision, guilt or shame, and inaccurately or unproductively ascribing meaning. So how do we get past those things? What is required of us to let go? There's a few things, and I would say this is the order that we need to do it in. Let's say that we have something important that is keeping us stuck in one way or another. Again, it could be any of the things that we mentioned earlier. Something that's holding us back. It could even be just the path. Maybe it's a past relationship. Maybe you went through a divorce, whatever it is. We have to acknowledge specifically what we're letting go of. So that's number one, specific acknowledgement of what you are letting go of. So let's use the example I just gave. So maybe it's a failed marriage, failed relationship. We have to acknowledge what that is that we're letting go. So maybe it's the reality of hopes and dreams and expectations and whatever it is, that led to you obviously marrying that person. There's a lot there. We have to acknowledge that we're letting go of those hopes and dreams with that person at that time. Now, that's not to say, of course, that we still can't realize those hopes and dreams in our future. But in order to really do that, we have to first let go of the past. So another bit there, but specific acknowledgement of what you're letting go of. Number one. Number two, understand your why. And I mentioned this earlier, but we're going to unpack the why at the end here. But you got to have, number one, specific acknowledgement of what you're letting go of. Number two, understanding your why, understand the why you're letting go of what it is that you need to. And then number three, you have to feel the feelings. Speaking from somebody who can get uncomfortable with strong feelings, this can be challenging. But I do believe that it is a requirement to let go, to truly let go of things or events, certainly the bigger ones, right? So again, you need to create space and time, whether that's 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, to work through things of, okay, I don't want to stay stuck here. So I'm going to feel, again, you acknowledge what you're letting go of. You know why you need to. And then you just have to go there, meaning, okay, the loss and the pain and the sadness, maybe the joy that came from that time or that thing and the happiness, feel it. That's, kind of very closely tied to the acknowledgement piece. Like, okay, this is what I'm letting go of. And then acceptance. This is number 4, is acceptance. Acceptance of what it was. This is important here, right? So acceptance of what it was. Again, the relationship, the thing, whatever it was at the time, and acceptance of what it is now. Meaning, again, let's use the example, the failed relationship of, okay, it was these hopes, these dreams, everything else involved in that, a life, a home, all of those things. What it is now is again, a failed relationship, but that's not all it is. And we can change the narrative. And this is the cool thing. This is where we get to ascribe a new meaning, tell a different story. Let me unpack this a little bit because I think this is really important. I bet that you can think of a time that something happened and you ascribed one meaning to it at the time. And when you look back now, the meaning is completely different. Maybe you lost a job and at the time it was terrible and it was a job that you really enjoyed. But looking back, you see that you likely wouldn't have left that job. And then it ended up leading you to an amazing new job and career. I have a story just like this myself personally. And that's one of, countless other times in my life where I experienced something, and again, we ascribe meaning, whether we say it that way or not. That's what's happening. This is, or this sucks, or this is terrible, whatever it is, whatever the meaning is. And then looking back, it's completely different. Another example of this is 2 people can experience the exact same thing and tell 2 very different stories. How is that possible? And the answer is perspective. When we are holding on to something, we're usually keeping it in the original meaning. So think of the examples you just gave. So the job loss, let's say. You lose a job, it's terrible. That's the original meaning that you ascribe to it. When we're holding on to something from our past, we're keeping it in that original state, which is not relevant. That's what it was or how it felt, but that's not what it is now. What it is now is a huge blessing, and it was an opportunity. It felt terrible, but it ended up being an opportunity. And we have the ability to ascribe a relevant meaning to anything in our lives. Anything that has ever been a part of your past, you get to tell the story of what it means. And that is number 5. So you have to specifically acknowledge what you're letting go of. You have to understand why. You need to feel the feelings. You have to accept what it was and accept what it is now. And then finally, you have to update the story. And this is what we just talked about. Ascribe a more relevant and productive meaning that involves accepting the events, things, feelings, relationships are a part of the past and ought to be left there. But the lessons learned are for the present and should be taken with us. Now, I understand that even, for me, when I say accepting that the events, things, feelings, and relationships, whatever they are part of the past and ought to be left there, there's kind of this visceral feeling inside of me of like, ooh, like those things are just like, that's it. Yeah. I mean, really, that's not a cold, apathetic posture. That's the reality. And just because you are holding on to something that is no longer, again, you've got the old meaning ascribed to it when that's not really relevant and that's not actually what it is today. That's maybe what it was. That's not what it is. And if it's the past and you're got an old meaning, then it ought to be that meaning needs to be left in the past and it's time for a new one. And really the relevant meaning is the lessons that we learn along the way and that can be taken with us and passed on. And again, this is specifically regarding things that we, of course, need to let go of. If we've got things that we want to hold on to, like our current relationships that are important to us, all that, of course, we want to, leave the bad stuff. There's lots of bad stuff that happens in current relationships and needs to be forgiven. Go back and listen to the last week's episode about healing. But we're talking about the things that we need to let go of, and we want to move forward with what is for the present, not what should be left in the past. Okay. I was going to bullet those one more time real quick. Letting go requires specific acknowledgement of what you're letting go of, requires that you understand the why, you feel the feelings, it requires acceptance, and it requires that you update the story. Now the why. Why do we want to let go? And the answer is freedom. Freedom to move forward without being weighed down. I want you to picture this. Picture yourself on a road, and up ahead are all of your deepest desires for love, joy, connection, purpose, intimacy, fulfillment, all the things that would make you feel the deepest sense of being alive. And then I want you to picture ropes, one end tied to each of your hands and one to each of your feet. And at the other end of the ropes are weights. Take a second to imagine what it would feel like day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year of trying to run towards those desires that you have, that each of us have, in making barely any noticeable progress. Just feel that for a second. We're striving for these things that we are naturally wired to desire, and we can't get there. Now imagine that all of a sudden, all of those ropes were cut. And you begin to run unencumbered towards those deepest desires of your heart and soul and those things that make life worth living. That's the freedom. That's the why. That's why we let go. I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. Deepak Chopra. It's this: in the process of letting go, you will lose many things from the past, but you will find yourself. I hope this was helpful. If it was, share with somebody. I hope you have a great day.